Hey everyone, Clownfish here, and I guess a new Batman trailer came out recently. Overall, I thought the trailer was pretty cool, and there's a bit to be excited about. One of the things I'm most excited about is seeing the return of the Riddler on the big screen. When I first heard the Riddler was in the main Bad Guys movie, I was a bit skeptical, but it seems as if they're going to be going with this Zodiac killer vibe with him, which looks really cool in my opinion. Notice how I said return though. You see, this isn't the Riddler's first time appearing in a live-action Batman movie. His first appearance in a live-action movie was Batman Forever, directed by Joel Schumacher, and in there he was a bit more lighthearted. It's clear this Riddler was a bit more on the campy side, so I'm excited to see a darker take on the character and to see him get a second shot on the big screen. Speaking of characters who deserve a second shot, there is one Batman villain I'd like to see come back in a potential sequel or other DC film, and that character is Dr. Victor Freeze, aka Mr. Freeze. But why do I think this? Well, let me explain the history of this chilling Batman villain. Created by writer David Wood and artist Sheldon Meldoff, Mr. Freeze made his first appearance in Batman number 121 when it was first released in February of 1959. Back then, he wore a much more colorful spandex costume than the usual robot suit we were familiar with. But his biggest difference here is that he wasn't even called Mr. Freeze back then. He was known as Mr. Zero. The basis for his origin is kinda similar to what it is today. He was one of the Korean scientists who was developing an experimental freeze gun until the weapon backfired on him, which inadvertently spilled cryogenic chemicals on himself. With this, he is forced to wear a special suit to help him survive, and now he uses his freeze gun to rob banks because he's greedy, I guess? If it isn't clear by now, Mr. Freeze around this time was what you may call a joke villain, a villain created just to make Batman's rogues gallery a bit more larger. Despite this, Mr. Freeze would stay relevant by appearing in the 1960s Batman television series alongside other iconic villains such as the Joker, the Penguin, and Catwoman. In this series, he's portrayed by three different actors: George Sanders, Otto Preminger, and Ellie Wallach. Fun fact, it was in this series that his name was officially changed from Mr. Zero to Mr. Freeze. Not only that, but his brightly colored spandex suit seen in the comics was now changed to a sleek white and blue costume which fits the cold vibe he's going with. As cool as it was to see him in the 60s show, he was still the campy comic villain from the comics, but now on TV. But Mr. Freeze would receive his big change nearly 30 years later. In 1992, a television show was produced titled Batman the Animated Series, created by Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and Mitch Bryan. Among critics and comic book fans, Batman the Animated Series is regarded as one of the best superhero shows ever produced. It is the second best animated show behind The Simpsons, and is thought to be the definitive version of the Batman mythos and the definitive version of the characters. And there isn't a better example of this than the episode Heart of Ice, the episode which introduced a much darker and more tragic take on Mr. Freeze. Similar to his previous incarnations, Mr. Freeze was a scientist, specifically a cryogenicist, but most importantly, he now had a wife, Nora, which he loved very much. Unfortunately for him, Nora became very sick with a terminal disease, and in desperation he froze her in an advanced cryogenic chamber to keep her alive, while he tried to find a cure for her illness. As if this wasn't bad enough, Victor's greedy boss learned about Victor's activities and demanded he hand over his technology. It's called a Scuffle, which then resulted in an explosion, causing Victor to be covered in his sub-zero chemicals and the death of Nora. The incident changed the once kind and humble scientist to a cold and heartless villain, now hellbent on getting revenge on anyone who is responsible for the death of Nora. Holy cow, this is a great origin for a supervillain, and fans seem to agree because this origin story for Mr. Freeze has become the standard for the character. The team behind Batman the Animated Series turned this once goofy-looking joke villain into an emotionless, cold, yet sympathetic villain. The episode was so beloved that it won a Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing in an Anime Program. So some of you may be thinking, Mr. Freeze sounds like such a cool and tragic villain, why don't you use him in the Batman films? Well, they did. And let's say it was met with a cold reception. Huh? Yeah, we're crossing this bridge. Mr. Freeze made his theatrical live-action debut in the 1997 film Batman and Robin, where he's played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. This film is infamous for being really bad, but there are other videos to talk about that, so let's just focus on Mr. Freeze. Many critics were not fond of Schwarzenegger's take on the Mr. Freeze character, mainly due to the part of Schwarzenegger just not understanding the complexity of his role and the ice puns he made constantly throughout the film. All of these issues led to Mr. Freeze feeling like an incomplete character. Oddly enough, while researching for this video, I learned that apparently this version of Mr. Freeze appeared in Space Jam: A New Legacy. He's apparently in the crowd of people watching the basketball game. Alright, what an odd character to include. Despite a negative reception of the film, Mr. Freeze has continued on to be a popular Batman villain, appearing in comic books, TV shows, and video games. So, yeah, that's the history of Mr. Freeze. I really do hope he does make another appearance on the big screen, because I feel like with the right writers, you can make him a very sympathetic villain, like his animated counterpart, or for a future Batman film, or maybe a tragic protagonist for a solo film that details his origins in the same vein as Joker. But that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed this shorter video, and I'll see you next time. Alright, take care.